Very good evening, friends. Good afternoon, Kavita. Now, students, we will be doing the Q&A, students, of the registration topic. Very quickly, students, I'll just do a quick recap of the things that we have discussed in the last particular session. So, therefore, at least the recap is there as far as this point is concerned. Now, if you see, students, we started off, if you remember, with the discussion on the effective date of registration. So, what is the effective date of registration, students? If you see over here, a person, first of all, we have discussed about the fact that if a person is liable for registration or not, and that liability to get themselves registered was under section 22 and 24. That liability to get themselves registered, students, was under section 22 and 24. Now, there were two particular points, students, which was being there over here. Point number one was that if they are taking the registration, and the second one was if they are not taking the registration. So, that was the two particular points, students, in this regard. Now, if they are taking the registration, when they are liable, students, and liability, as you know, it is under 22, which is the turnover based threshold, and 24 is any case, irrespective of the turnover, you have to get yourself registered. Take registration, and if you're taking it within 30 days, then it is backdated. Backdated means the registration will be effective from the date when you are liable for registration. And if you're taking after 30 days, students, in that case, the effective date will be prospective, which means that as and when you will take the registration, from that date, the registration will take off. And if you do not take the registration, students, in that particular case, as I told you, that the proper officer will detect your case, and whenever he detects your case, the date when he is temporarily registering you, that will be the effective date. And when you are not liable for registration, but you want to take a voluntary registration, then the date of registration would be the effective date. Because why this date is so important, as I told you in the ITC topic also, this was being discussed. And what exactly it was, that as far as the ITC was concerned, students, what we all have discussed, students, in this regard is this, that only a registered person, students, can take up the ITC. That is what we have discussed in this case. Now, the two sections that we were discussing, one was section 22(1), wherein the turnover based threshold was being provided to you. In that section 22(1), the GST registration time limit, turnover based criteria for registration, students. Now, please have a look over here in this context. One is for goods and another is for service. Supply of the goods and the supply of the services. Now, if you see for point number one, the four special category state students which has been there in this context, the four special category state students which has been there, which is Mizoram, Tripura, Manipur, and Nagaland. 10 lakhs each, be it goods or be it supply of services. The next six category students which is there, which is the Telangana, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, thereafter Meghalaya, Puducherry, and Arunachal Pradesh. For that, 20 lakhs is the limit for both the goods and services. And in that, the last category, students, which is arriving through a notification number. Do you remember the notification number? The higher limit of 40 lakhs is given by virtue of a notification, which is notification number 10/2019. Now, that higher limit of 40 lakhs is available only for goods, and that too if the supply is intrastate supply, and that is through the three big special category state. Which are those three big special category state? Himachal Pradesh, Assam, and J&K, and all the other remaining parts of India. In those particular cases, students, this is the position of 40 lakhs. But I told you that in some of the cases, the 40 lakhs limit will not apply. The enhanced limit of 40 lakhs will not apply. Or may I say the notification number 10/2019 will not apply. In which particular case, students? The cases which has been identified for all of you is this. In this case, where the supplier does not exclusively supply the goods, if you can recall that example wherein I am supplier of the computers, at the same time I'm also supplying or providing the services, in that case, the higher limit of 40 will not be made applicable, it will be only restricted to 20 lakhs. The second one, students, is about the fact that if he is engaged in the supply of goods, which is namely tobacco, ice cream, and pan masala, and the other bricks and tiles. So that is also the category. And the third one, students, I told you that there are exemptions which are being given under 23(2). Now, in the case of the exemption, if your case falls under the exemption, students, and even if you are supplying the goods, that too from those three specified category states or the other parts of India, your exemption limit only would be up to rupees 20 lakhs. So, which means that the enhanced limit of 40 lakhs will not be made applicable in that case. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Every one of you. That exactly the point, students. So now, students, in this particular context, the next particular point, students, that you all can see over here, compulsory registration in certain cases. Now that is 24. Now, we know that in which cases the compulsory registration is applicable. One is the interstate supply, you do the compulsory registration to be applicable. But yes, that point number one signifies that there is some exemption that is available for the interstate supply, which is under section 23. Casual taxable person also has the compulsory registration obligation, but again, then there are certain exemption available under section 23 too. Now, this third box is about the person receiving the supply, on which that person who is the recipient is liable to pay the GST under the reverse charge mechanism. So, whether that recipient will they be under the obligation to get themselves registered, and the answer is yes. Now, this 9(5) e-commerce operator, which you all can see, students, over here is about a transporter, that is the Ola, hotel accommodation OYO, housekeeping services, and the restaurant services. Non-resident taxable person who do not have any fixed place of business in India. Person who are required to deduct the TDS under section 51 in this context. So please understand, for TDS and TCS, I told you that though they may be supplier in their own capacity and they may have taken the registration being a supplier, but for the purpose of discharging the obligation as a tax deductor or as a tax collector, they will have to get themselves separately registered, and then there are separate set of compliance that will follow on them, namely the return and the due dates, etc. Now, this particular part, students, which is there about the supplier other than notified under section 9(5) who supply through an electronic commerce operator. So that I told you the example, any particular person who is supplying the goods through an ECO, students, in that particular case, that supplier, now this is a registration for the supplier, students, we are not talking about the ECO, this is a registration for the supplier. So whether that supplier will they be required to get themselves registered, and the answer is yes. Okay, but again, point number 3 signifies that there are some exemption which is available for such supplier who is supplying it through the ECO, that we will see. Just that green color shade, students, which is there. A person just before that, the green color shade just before that, a person who supplies on behalf of some other taxable person. So it is the agent. Which agent? Para 3 of Schedule 1 agent, who is issuing the tax invoice to the recipient in his own capacity. Who is issuing the tax invoice to the recipient in his own capacity. So that is the agent that we're talking about it in this regard, students. Isn't it? Now, if you all see over here in this particular context, students, if you all will see over here in this particular context, what is that we're talking about it in this regard, students? Now, over here, if you all see in this particular context, students, the person who is supplying on behalf of some other taxable person, students, person who supplies on behalf of some other taxable person. If you all will look into this one very carefully, what exactly you're going to get it, please be careful. Please be careful on this one. Now, if this agent who is supplying the or who is issuing the invoices in his own name, if he is receiving from a principal who is a taxable person, that is case number 1, or if he is receiving the supply from a non-taxable principal, then if the principal is a taxable person, if the answer is yes, then the agent will have to get himself registered under 24 compulsory registration. Whereas if his principal is not a taxable person, then in that case the threshold limit exemption, the threshold limit registration is what would be made applicable to them. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. So that is the point. Now the OIDR non-resident who is providing the OIDR service students, they also has the obligation to get themselves compulsory registered. ISD, whether or not separately registered under this act. So again the same thing for ISD also, even though they may have been separately registered, still they need to get their, even though they may have been separately being registered, still they would have to get themselves registered as an ISD. Okay, so that is one thing that you just bear it in mind. Now coming to the exemption particular part, students, section 23 is all about the exemption. That is when they will not make the person liable for registration. And then there is section 23(1) and then 23(2). Now, so far as section 23(1) is concerned, what they say for 23(1), person is engaged exclusively in supplying goods or service or both, not liable to tax or wholly exempt from tax. So that is section 23(1). Now this is about what? Engage exclusively in supplying goods or service or both, not liable to tax. So it simply means that there is no liability to pay the GST for any reason whatsoever. So if there is no liability to pay the GST for any reason whatsoever, then you will be eligible for a full exemption in this. You see, point number 2 is about individual or HUF who is an agriculturalist and his supply is only limited to the produce that he has made out of the cultivation of the land. Produce that he has made out of the cultivation of the land, that is the limited level of his supply, students, so far as 23(1) is concerned. So again, for him also there is a full exemption which is. Come to point number 3, students, over here, section 23(2). Person making only reverse charge supply. So be careful here. Here the exemption is given to that supplier. Please be careful. The previous that we have discussed about the compulsory registration 24, that was in respect of the recipient. Recipient who is obligated to discharge the liability under the reverse charge mechanism, that recipient is supposed to get compulsory registered in 24. Whereas here we are talking about 23(2), which is nothing but for the supplier who is only supplying that where the liability to pay the GST is under the RCM. So he will never have the liability. And if he never has the liability, so therefore exemption is given to him. Now come to the other particular cases of 23(2). Now this is where we have made certain linkage with the previous section 24, wherein subject to this the exemptions are being provided over here in this regard. What exactly it is, students? If you see over here in this context. Now if you see over here in this particular context, what you will get it in this regard, students? Person making interstate supplies of taxable services up to rupees 20 lakhs. Person making the interstate supplies of taxable service up to rupees 20 lakhs. So in this particular context, students, if the persons are making interstate supplies of taxable services up to rupees 20 lakhs, what does it imply? Indeed, that is the case. So students, over here, if you see very, very carefully in this particular context, if you see over here, students, in this particular context, students, the person making interstate supplies of a taxable service up to rupees 20 lakhs. So obviously, students, this is only for the services, students. So I give you the example, if I providing my lecture through an Amazon, so therefore it is all about service. So for me, there is a limit of 20 lakhs. But if I am supplying goods worth 100 to Amazon, that is it. Nothing else I have done it. So even that 100 rupees which I have supplied, that will make me liable for registration under section 24. Compulsory registration has to be done. Isn't it? That is the point. Now 23(2) is about the interstate supply. Now this, students, sorry. So 23(2) was about the interstate supply of the taxable services. So this is about the interstate supply, students. That issue is here. This is what the issue is. Okay, this issue is over here. Which the example which I gave you is the last one, point number 3. Coming to point number 1 is about the interstate supply of services. So if there is an interstate supply of the goods, and if I make a supply of the goods only of rupees 100, still I would be liable to get myself registered 24. But if it is an interstate supply of services, then I will have the higher limit of rupees 20 lakhs or 10 lakhs if I am in that first 4 category, special category state, 10 lakhs. Now, if you see the second one, students, person making interstate supplies of notified handicraft goods. So, interstate supply for services, any services, 20 lakhs. Goods, only handicraft or handmade goods. That is it. For that, interstate supply 20 lakhs limit is available. So goods only limited to this. Any, whereas for services, any services. Same way, casual taxable person making an interstate supply of the same goods up to rupees 20 lakh. That is what it is in this regard. This is what we have discussed, students, up till that point. Thereafter, students, effective date of registration we have already discussed. Then, students, if you recall this particular point, which you have also taken into account, one important point was in respect of the casual taxable person or a non-resident taxable person. The other person will have to get themselves registered by making an application within 30 days is what we have seen. But for this particular category of the person, students, we know that before they commence their business in the other state where they would be considered as a casual taxable person, they need to get themselves registered 5 days, at least 5 days in advance. At least 5 days in advance. That exactly is the point. Now with that, students, we are good to go with the questions then. I hope that you would have read the theory and all, and through the Q&A itself, you will come to know the nature of the direct questions are being asked, students. Cancellation of registration, amendment of registration, so on and so forth. Now coming to the question, students, directly in this regard, you see the Q&A particular part. First one. Mahadev Enterprise, a sole proprietorship firm, opened a shopping complex dealing in supply of ready-made garments at multiple locations, that is Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Tripura in the month of June. So these are the multiple locations, students, where he has started off. Then thereafter, students, which you can see over here. So in this particular case, so students, as you know, all are the special category states. The Himachal Pradesh has the third category where the higher limit is available of 40 lakhs. Uttarakhand is having 20 lakhs. Tripura is having 10 lakhs. Isn't it? Now, if that is the case, if you have got any special category state with a lower limit, which in my example is Tripura, then the limit for registration for the entire entity, so it's a PAN based registration, isn't it? So the entire entity will have to then go with that lower limit only. They will not be eligible for higher limit students. They will not be eligible for the higher limit, and that exactly is the point. So if you see the things below, it has furnished the following details relating to the supply made at such multiple locations in the month of June. And what is that? Particulars Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Tripura. For Himachal it is 40 lakhs, Uttarakhand 20 lakhs, Tripura it is 10 lakhs. Intrastate supply of taxable goods 22.5 lakhs, Uttarakhand nil and Tripura it is 7 lakhs. Intrastate supply of exempted goods, students, in this context, Tripura it is 6 lakhs. Intrastate supply of the non-taxable goods 21 lakhs and 40,000. Now, as you can see, when we have to take up the aggregate turnover, we have to consider everything. Now, if I do the aggregate turnover of everything, students, which I have done it in the Hindi class, I think it is somewhere around 36.9 lakhs. Or you may just change. It is already crossed 40 lakhs. Or it has already crossed 10 lakhs. In any case, the answer would be on 10 lakhs. Here they are just trying to confuse you by giving the limit so that they want your answer to be at 40 lakhs threshold, and they would want you to write 40 lakhs, and therefore the registration becomes compulsory. They would want to you write 40 lakhs, and therefore the registration is compulsory. But you have to be careful, and you have to say that no, the limit is 10 lakhs, and in this case also the registration is compulsory, but the limit would be only 10 lakhs. Okay. With the help of the above mentioned information, answer the following questions giving reasons. Determine whether Mahadev Enterprise is liable to be registered under the GST law, and what is the threshold limit of taking the registration in this case, assuming that it is not required to pay any tax on inward supply under the reverse charge mechanism. So that is the normal answer that we are supposed to write. Now here, students, obviously if you see the kind of an answer, again you will get intimidated. I mean, you will understand what they have written, but the challenge is obviously how to reproduce it. So students, if you would want, students, just take a note of this particular presentation technique, all of you. Presentation technique which will help you to present the answers properly. It will help you to answer the presentation properly. Rupa, Kavita, just take a note of it. So first header, I'll just give you the header, students. In this case, header would be entity. The first header, students, in this case is the entity. Second header, students, in this regard would be the goods or services. The supply that they are doing, is it for goods or it is for services, and whether it is an intrastate or interstate supply. Whether it is intrastate or interstate supply, you can just take a note of that also. Then the turnover in the current financial year, which they have achieved, which they need to put up. And then, students, finally, over here would be registration under section 22, where the registration will be done. 22 read with notification number 20 oblique 19. 22 read with notification number 20 of 2019, or it will be under section 24. So where the registration will take place, students, that is what, students, you need to put across over here in this regard. Where you'll have to put up you will have to put across in this particular way. Section 22 read with notification number 2019, or section 24 as the case may be. Is that point clear to all of you, students? Fine. Now if you see the entity, students, over here is Mahadev Enterprise, and where is exactly is the location, students? The location which I'm talking about it over here is about, for entity Mahadev Enterprise, the location I'm talking about is in the all the three SCS. SCS 1 Tripura, SCS 2 Uttarakhand, and SCS 3 is Himachal Pradesh. All the three in this context. You agree to this one, students? So therefore, this is what it is in this regard. So therefore, you can just write entity is Mahadev Enterprise, and it is located where? In all the three SCS, the way we have put across in this case. Thereafter, students, over here, if you see whether it is supply of goods or service that they are engaged into it, or whether there is a intrastate or interstate supply that they are doing it. Now, if you see, students, the supply that they have done is the supply of the goods. Which goods? Ready-made garments. And the nature of supply is that of the intrastate supply. Nature of the supply, students, in this case is the intrastate supply. That is what they have achieved in this regard. Now, if you see the turnover in the current financial year, in this case, is 56.9, the total turnover which they have achieved in this context. Now, question therefore is over here. Now, see the presentation that you will do. This is standard one towards the end. Registration, students, which section will be considered? Now, since it is an intrastate supply, students, therefore there will not be section 24. Since it is an intrastate supply, therefore there will not be any section 24. So the registration would be under section 22. Now the location, students, one of the SCS, that is Tripura, has a threshold limit of rupees 10 lakhs. One of the SCS, that is Tripura, has a threshold limit of rupees 10 lakhs. So below this, after location, students, notification number 20/19, is it applicable now? Is it applicable? And the answer is no, because of this very reason itself. And therefore, students, in this context, the threshold limit that would be applicable would be rupees 10 lakhs. Threshold limit that would be applicable would be rupees 10 lakhs. Now you have to give the answer about liability to get himself registered. The liability to get himself registered. Now you have to give the remark, students. If you see the remark over here, since the supplier makes intrastate supply in Tripura, which is the SCS, having threshold limit of rupees 10 lakhs. Therefore, the higher limit of rupees 40 lakhs shall not be applicable. So what is the remark? I'm dictating it again. Since the supplier makes intrastate supply in Tripura, which is the SCS, having the threshold limit of rupees 10 lakhs, comma, therefore, the higher limit of rupees 40 lakhs shall not be applicable. Is that point clear to all of you students now? Everyone? That exactly is the point, students. So this is what it is in this regard. So I hope that all of you have done with this one. This is the line of your presentation. Now there is one more type of question, students, where the presentation will change or get altered a bit in this context. Wherein I'll just show you the question where this presentation will alter a bit in this regard. I'll just show you that particular thing also. Not an issue. Now there are some other sub question also, students. Let's try to answer that sub questions. Point the second part of the question, students. The first part is already over. Now second part. Now for second part, you need not make a table. Directly for the main answer, you have made the table. Now the any modified questions, we will answer it accordingly. Let's see the modified question. Explain with reason whether your answer in one, which we've discussed, will change in the following independent cases. If Mahadev Enterprise is dealing exclusively in taxable supply of goods only from Himachal Pradesh. If it is only from Himachal Pradesh, then students, that too taxable goods, then notification number 10/2019 is going to be made applicable. And in which case, what will happen, students? In which case, the higher limit of rupees 40 lakhs would be the threshold which will make them liable for registration. Now, you will say, sir, what difference does it make? In any case, in 10 lakhs also, he was liable to get himself registered. And now in 40 lakhs also, he is liable to get himself registered because his aggregate turnover in the current financial year is some 56.9 lakhs. So what difference does it make? Many students will ask this kind of a question. Difference it makes, students. It makes a lot of difference. And what the difference? The difference is this, that you need to make an application within 30 days from the date when you are liable to get registered. You need to make an application within 30 days from the date when you are liable for registered, and that will decide whether the registration will be backdated or it would be from the date of registration itself. That exactly the point. So over here, therefore, if you see very carefully, we will say that 40 lakhs is the answer. And once the turnover crosses 40 lakhs, then within 30 days, the application needs to be made for the purpose of registration. And if he doesn't make so, then the, the effective date of registration will be taken from the date when the actual registration. Is that clear to all of you students? Point number B. If Mahadev Enterprise is dealing in taxable supply of goods and service only from Himachal Pradesh, then the limit will be 20 lakhs in this context. Sorry, goods and services. Students, this is goods and services in this context. So if it is a goods and services, students, what do you all get into this one, students, in this regard for goods and services? Please tell me. So far as the goods and services are concerned, students, so far as the goods and services are concerned, what we are going to say about it? Indeed, indeed the case. So I told you already the higher limit of 40 lakhs will not be available if you are engaged in supply of both goods and services. Therefore, the limit would be restricted to 20 lakhs. Point number C. Mahadev Enterprises is dealing in taxable supply of goods only from Himachal Pradesh and has also effected interstate supply of taxable goods other than the notified handicraft item amounting to rupees 4 lakhs. So, if that is the case, students, then what happens? Then you will have to go with the compulsory registration 24. The turnover has got no relevance, isn't it? This is what. With that, students, this is how the presentation, students, have to be looked upon in this context. Now we go, students, to the next particular part of the question. Second question. LMN Private Limited Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu exclusively manufactures and sells product X, which is exempt from GST via notification issued under relevant GST legislation. So this is where, students, there is another. This is the second type of question. I'll tell you. Let's first read it out, and you will also will understand what is the nature of this question. The company sells product X only within Tamil Nadu and is not registered under the GST. So you will have to practice. I'll give you some 3 questions or so, wherein you need to make this kind of a table and make it on your own, so that your mind should also work. How do your hand should have the grip of the solution now? Okay. The company sells product X only within Tamil Nadu and is not registered under the GST. Further, all the inward supply of the company are taxable under the forward charge. That is, all the inward supply of the company are taxable under the forward charge. So there is no RCM. Therefore, Section 24 will not apply in this particular. The turnover of the company in the previous year was rupees 45 lakh. The company expects the sales to grow by 30%. The turnover of the company, students, in the previous year was how much? Rupees 45 lakhs. The company expects the sales to grow by 30% in the current year. The company purchased additional machinery for manufacturing X on 1st of July. The purchase price of the capital goods was rupees 30 lakhs exclusive of GST at 18%. However, effective from 1st of November, exemption available on X was withdrawn by the central government and GST at 12% was imposed thereon. The turnover of the company for the half year ended on 30th September was rupees 45 lakh. Turnover of the company for the half year ended on 30th of September was rupees 45 lakh. Examine the above scenario and advise LMN Private Limited whether it needs to get registered under the GST. Now, students, if you see, what happens is that 45 lakhs is the turnover up till 30 September. That is what they have told to all of you in this context. Now, what has happened, students, is that effective from 1st of November, the exemption has been withdrawn. Now, the moment the exemption is withdrawn, students, you are liable to get yourself registered now. Please be careful over here. In this case, what happens in this regard? Students, he is a supplier of the goods. And from where he is supplying? Tamil Nadu. Whether the higher limit of 40 lakhs will it be applicable? Answer is yes. But unfortunately, by 30th September only, he has crossed 45 lakhs, 40 lakhs. So his turnover in 30th September itself is 45 lakhs. So the moment the exemption notification is withdrawn, immediately he will have to get himself registered now. Because obviously he is already done with his limit. So immediately from that day itself, he is liable to get himself registered. That is the point that will emerge because he has already crossed a turnover. The moment the notification is withdrawn, he has to get himself registered immediately. This is what it is. Now, what happens when this point number B is the important particular point, but this point number B you are going to learn in ITC. What happens in point number B if the answer to the above question is in affirmative? Affirmative means yes, he has to get himself registered. But from which date he is going to get himself registered? Immediately from 1st of November. 1st of November itself. Then the notification is withdrawn. Now what happens is that up till now, till 31st of October, he was not liable for registration. So therefore, he was not a registered person. Because he was not a registered person, he could not take the ITC. Now from 1st of November, students, he will be eligible to take the ITC, if assuming that he has got registered immediately. Now, if that is the case, students, what will happen is that whatever is the ITC now, which is there, will be eligible to him. So, the capital goods that he has purchased somewhere in July, on that proportionate credit, he is going to get it, because now these capital goods are going to be used in that period when he is liable to pay the GST. When he is liable to pay the GST, students. And that is the point, students, over here in this regard. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Every one of you. If you see in this particular context, students, what exactly you get it. Now, please have a look over here in this context. See here, this is the kind of a question that you are going to encounter. So this is the second part of question, wherein till a particular date you are not liable, and after that date you will become liable. So therefore, if that is the kind of an information which has been given to you, so you have to play date wise. Now from 1st of April to 31st of October, say the value of supply is 45 lakhs. Whether it was an exempt or non-exempt turnover, it was an exempt turnover. Therefore, he was not liable to register. Therefore, he was not liable to register. That is the reason why you see liable to register. The answer is no. So the period was from 1st of April to 31st of October. Value of supply is 45 lakhs. Exempt or non-exempt? The answer to that, students, is exempt. Liable to register? The answer is no. Now just have a look to the remark side, students. So far as the remark side is concerned, I have given two remarks. First is that he is a supplier of goods, and the second one is that the turnover is more than rupees 40 lakhs. Turnover, students, is more than rupees 40 lakhs. Still no registration. Till this period, still no registration till this period. Why? Since the supplier is covered under the exemption, as a result of which he is not liable to pay the GST. Since the supplier is covered under the exemption, as a result of which he is not liable to pay the GST. That point clear to all of you, students? Every one of you. That is the point, students. This is how the things has to be looked upon. Now, if you see over here, on 1st of November, the value of supply is more than rupees 45 lakhs. Value of supply is more than rupees 45 lakhs. Whether it is exempt or non-exempt, to that the answer is non-exempt. If he is liable to register, students, is he liable to register? To that the answer is yes, liable to register, and that too, students, immediately, because the good has become non-exempt and the aggregate turnover is already more than rupees 40 lakh. So liable to register, students, family, immediately, because what? The goods has become non-exempt and the aggregate turnover is more than rupees 40 lakh. Did you have taken a note of it, students? All of you. That is how the things has to be looked upon. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Any doubt, students, up till here? Shall we proceed now? Students, question number 3 is the same as question number 2. Everything is same. All the entire provision, if you see, 2 and 3 are the same. For 3, mistakenly it got printed, but the questions are the same, students. 2 and 3. Let's come to question number 4 now, students. Question number 4 is a good one in this context. Fourth question, students, in this regard, which has been there. So over here, students, you see, ratio of enterprise, a sole proprietorship firm, started an air-conditioned restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra, in the month of February, wherein the customers are served cooked food as well as cold drinks or non-alcoholic beverage. So Rishabh Enterprise, a sole proprietorship firm, started an air-conditioned restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra, in the month of what? February, wherein the customers are served cooked food as well as cold drinks and non-alcoholic beverages. Okay. In March, the firm opened a liquor shop in Raipur, Uttarakhand for trading of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So, students, please understand one thing in this case. So, what is the nature of his activity? Bishop Enterprise, what is the nature of it? The first activity in Virar, that is a service, catering service, indoor catering. So, that is an indoor catering, that is a service. And what he is doing in Uttarakhand? In Uttarakhand, students, he is supplying what? Liquor for human consumption. So, that is through a shop, which means that is a supply of goods. Okay, though it is a supply of goods, but it is not leviable. It is not leviable. Why petroleum? Because it is not chargeable at all. In the constitution itself, it has been taken out. We have seen in the first class that is outside the scope of levy. But is it a supply? Yes, supply without levy. Now, a supply without levy. Please recall the definition of exempted goods. In the exempted goods, all the non-taxable supply is covered, and non-taxable supply includes the supply on which there is no levy. Non-taxable supply includes the supply on which there is a non-levy. So therefore, it is an exempted supply, but in the form of a non-taxable supply, which means that a supply wherein there is no levy at all, no levy. But now please tell me, when you talk about aggregate turnover, in aggregate turnover, students, do you consider all the supplies taxable exempted? Answer is yes. All the supplies are considered. What is not considered in the aggregate turnover is the activity which is not a supply at all. So if there is an activity which is not a supply at all, then that is what is not to be a part of your aggregate turnover. But here it is very clear that the activity which you are pursuing is very much a supply, but outside the scope of levy, which is included in the definition of exempted good. Which is included in the definition of exempted goods. So definitely we will consider this turnover also. Now you tell me, with the nature of the operation which Rishabh Enterprise is doing, with the nature of the operation which Mr. Rishabh Enterprise is doing, what would be his limit to be considered? Whether the limit would be 40 lakhs or 20 lakhs? 20 lakhs. Why? Because he is supplying both the goods as well as service, both. And one more reason I can give it to you, that he is also supplying from Uttarakhand. Fact that he's supplying from Uttarakhand, that makes his supply at 20 lakhs. But if it would not have been Uttarakhand, say it would have been, say, other particular parts of, say, Maharashtra or whichever parts. So therefore, in that case, the higher limit of 40 lakhs would not be made applicable, because he is providing the services from Virar, which is indoor catering, and second, he is also doing a supply of goods together. So therefore, his limit would be at 20 lakhs. Determine whether Rishabh Enterprise is liable to be registered under GST law with the help of the following information. Now, over here, if you see, now, students, over here, now they are giving you the figures. Now, you know the limit, students, in this context. The serving of cooked food and cold drinks, non-alcoholic beverage in restaurant in Maharashtra. So, that particular point, students, which has been there, is about what? 5,50,000 and 6,50,000. And non-alcoholic beverage in the restaurant in Maharashtra, students, in this case, it is 5 lakhs. No, no. Sorry. Just a second. What is he doing in Maharashtra? Just let non-alcoholic beverage. So I think this thing that is there. So this they have associated serving of cooked food and cold drinks or non-alcoholic beverage in restaurant in Maharashtra. So 5 lakh 50 and 6 lakh 50. That is 12 lakhs. This is a non-alcoholic beverage in Maharashtra. Students, I think this just got jumbled up. Okay, just kindly correct it. So serving of cooked food and cold drinks, a non-alcoholic beverage in Maharashtra. So that is about 550 and 650. Okay. Now say alcoholic liquor for human consumption is 5 lakhs. So and that they are doing it from Uttarakhand. Alcoholic beverage, students. This restaurant, na, this actually is, or may I put this 5 lakhs as separate this thing? This is the 5 lakhs part. Okay. Sale of alcoholic beverage. This is the 5 lakh part. Now this, students, is which we can see supply of packed food items from restaurant in Maharashtra. Supply of packed food items from restaurant in Maharashtra. Please add to this one. So this is how it would be. Okay. Now I told you the limit is 20 lakhs. So you just need to at what point of time the 20 lakhs threshold is crossed. So if you see, you have to take aggregate turnover, even the taxable as well as exempted. So if you see from the first point, serving of cooked food and cold drinks and non-alcoholic beverage in restaurant in Maharashtra, so that students total is how much? 550 and 650, which is 12 lakhs. So this is 12 lakhs. Now you add to 12 lakhs students with this sale of alcoholic liquor for human consumption, which is 5 lakhs. So now you get 17. Okay, now you see sale of alcoholic liquor for human consumption in Uttarakhand 1.5. That is in February, na? Now you are at what stage? 18.5 students. In March only, students, your 2 lakhs is getting March only, students, your 2 lakhs is getting increased. March only, your 2 lakhs. So that way you are now at 20.5 lakhs. So you will be made liable for registration, students, from which month? From March month, from that date. Okay, and from that date, within 30 days, you have to get yourself registered because you are liable from that date. Na? So within 30 days, you have to get yourself registered. Is that point clear to all of you, students? Every one of you. This is what you have to do. It. So here it is. This is a simple one. Here, any case, the presentation you'll do with this same presentation. The only thing that you have to write over here is that what is the limit which is applicable to him. And as I've proved it, students, the limit over here that is applicable is how much is the limit, students? 20 lakhs. Okay, not 40 lakhs. Is that point clear to all of you, students? Every one of you. Fine. So this is what it is in this regard. Now, students, if you see, so that is the point, and within 30 days, students. So 30 days from the date it became on which it becomes liable for registration. You have to make an application. Now, what about in Uttarakhand? Now, this is an important sentence, student. Please have a look. If he is liable to get himself registered, will he register in Uttarakhand also? So, for aggregate turnover purpose, you have considered the turnover in Uttarakhand as well. But will he be getting himself registered, students, in Uttarakhand? To that, the answer is no. Why is it so? Because he is supplying liquor from that. That is outside the scope of levy under this act. Only CGST, but also SGST and IGST, which means that he will not take any registration so far as that is concerned. The registration will be only under the VAT. Let's have a look, students. The last question which I'm going to do with all of you is question number 5. With the help of the following information in the case of Mrs. Jayant Enterprise, Jaipur, Rajasthan, for the financial year, determine the aggregate turnover for the purpose of registration under the CGST Act. Particulars is sale of diesel on which VAT is levied by the Rajasthan state government in this context. So, students, this is also diesel, students, again in that 5 petroleum item. But so therefore it is a non-taxable supply. But a non-taxable supply is defined and it is coming under the scope of exempt supply. Will we consider this? And the answer is yes. I told you that only the activity which is not supply, you will not consider that in your aggregate turnover. This will be considered. Point number two, supply of goods after completion of job work from the place of joint enterprise directly by principal by declaring the place of Mr. Jayant Enterprise as additional place of business. Friends, in this context. Now, just tell me in this regard, students, in this particular context, supply of goods after completion of job work from the place of joint enterprise directly by principal. So, who is doing it, students? Directly by principal. So, this would be going in the aggregate turnover of whom? This will go in the aggregate turnover of principal and not a. The Giant Enterprise students is an agent. So is he para 3 agent? Is he para 3 agent? Answer is no. Will it be considered as his turnover? And the answer is no. So what you have to write over here is this, that Mr. Jayant will not be considered as an agent for this particular supply. And since it is directly supplied by the principal in his own invoice. So in whose invoice it would be going from Jayant Enterprise? The invoice would be issued by principal, which means that Jayant Enterprise will not consider rupees 3 lakhs as a part of his supply. And because of that reason, if it is not his supply, will you consider this as a part of his aggregate turnover of Jayant Enterprise? Answer is no. Export of goods, students. I told you aggregate turnover will need all the supplies, which is there. Export, interstate, intrastate, everything will be considered. So 5 lakhs will be considered. Now, supply to his own additional place of business in Rajasthan. Is it a supply? And the answer is no. And the answer is no. So, if it is to his own, had that additional place, if they would have taken a registration, then they would have become a distinct person. Him distinct person. If they would have taken registration today. The fact that they have not told you anything about the registration in this particular case, therefore, we will not consider that as a separate person, and therefore, it is not a supply at all. So this is what you have to write, students. Not a supply. So the answer for this, why we are not considering this, both of them are not supply. So this is not a supply of Jayant Enterprise, but it is a supply of principal. Whereas this is not even a supply. Why? It is not a supply to a distinct person. Point number 5, students. Outward supply of service on which GST is to be paid by recipient under the reverse charge mechanism. Now, for him, it is remember, students, this is an exempt supply. This is an exempt supply. Now, please tell me, students, over here, be careful over here, students. If Jayant Enterprise, please pay attention what I'm saying. Here, you can make an error. Students, if Jayant Enterprise would have done only this kind of supply, there is no other supply information given to you. That Jayant Enterprise is only supplying where the liability to pay would go to the recipient under the reverse charge mechanism. The liability to pay will go to the recipient under the reverse charge mechanism. In that particular case, we would have said what, students? In that particular case, we would have said that in such particular case, because the liability goes to the recipient under the reverse charge mechanism, therefore we would have concluded to say that. Say what, students? Indeed. Indeed. We have said the same thing. We would have said the same thing, students. That he is eligible for a full exemption. No registration is required. But here he is doing other supplies also. The question of thinking about exemption under section 23(2) will not apply. Question of thinking about exemption 23(2) will not apply. So this will bring us to the normal case. Now you tell me, this outward supply which I am doing, although I am not liable to pay the GST, but will it be considered as my supply? Will it be a part of my aggregate turnover? And the answer is yes. In fact, in the exempt turnover definition, this is also covered. Remember, in one of the class, I have given you the exempt turnover definition, the list. I told you that this list is going to be made applicable later on when we get somewhere near to the ITC topic. Check out in the initial lecture, first class or second or third class, in the initial common this thing. At that point of time, even this supply, students, would be considered as a part of the exempt supply because I don't have the liability to pay. And because I don't have the liability to pay on such supply, therefore this is considered as an exempt supply. As I told you, students, exempt turnover will be a part of your total aggregate turnover. So this is the topic, students. Please be careful. Please take a note of it. For this topic, first you refer the definition of exempted turnover. You need to be very clear about it. What comes under the exempted turnover? Because these are the typical cases where you come to know that this becomes a part of your exempted turnover. This becomes a part of your exempted turnover. So definitely it is an exempted turnover. So therefore you will include this 1 lakh. And by the way, what would be the limit that would be applicable to him? 20 lakhs. Jaipur, no? Supply of goods from Jaipur. No, I think it would be, he's also doing a service. So students, in this case, it will be 20 lakhs. Because see, the last point is about the service. So he is a supplier of goods as well as supplier of service. So therefore, first you establish the limit. What is the limit for him? For the limit for him is 20 lakhs. Now you go to the aggregate turnover. Make a statement of aggregate turnover. And by making a statement of aggregate turnover, I can see point number 1 taken. Point number 2 not taken. Point number 3 taken. So therefore 1 and 2, 1 and 3 it is 6 lakhs. Fourth not taken. Fifth taken. So 6 lakhs plus 1, 7 lakhs. So it doesn't exceed the threshold of 20 lakhs. So therefore he is not liable for registration. Is that point clear to all of you students? Every one of you? So now with that students, I am now giving you the remaining question students for practice part. There are hardly now 2 or 3 questions which are left, students. So therefore, please do the practice on this one. And I also would want your MCQ to be solved. And please show me your MCQ immediately after this, so that tomorrow, students, would be the invoice. Invoice is also very returns. A small topic will get over immediately, students. Okay, and also I will initiate the ITC, the second part of the ITC. So wrap up, students, quickly. Hardly there are 2 or 3 questions, and they are simple questions we have already covered. So the varieties I've already covered. 2, 3 questions which is of the similar level. I'm just keeping it for you so that at least the similar question you can practice it. Similar question, students, you can all practice it. Fine. Please do it, students. You will find it interesting to practice it because they are all similar now. Get into the job, students, quickly, and I'll see you now. See, all the things are there. In fact, they are repeated also, students. Unfortunately, some of them are repeated also. But still do it. Repeated in the form of the numbers are different, but still at least do it. Even though it is repeated with different numbers, still at least do it. You'll feel good about it. Okay. Fine. So I'll see you, students, tomorrow. Tomorrow, students, the timing for the returns part will be 8 o'clock in the morning. Fine. See you then.